Hi folks, welcome back and thanks for joining. Today we're going to make some clay, and we're going to use a recipe that is over 100 years old, so we're going to make sustainable clay. Now this is a kid-friendly project, but artists take note. This is a valid artistic medium. Now what we're going to do is we're going to have a little fun with it, of course, and we're going to add some food color. But for professional results, because we're using potato starch, we're going to add something to that so critters are not attracted to your art. Alright, so this can all be done in the kitchen. We're going to use laundry starch, that's typically potato starch. We're going to use baking soda, and we're going to use some corn oil. Alright, let's get started. Okay, so to begin, we're going to add the dry ingredients first. Now this is a bit more like cooking or baking than typically you would think that I would put the water in first. So what I have here is I have a pack of the laundry starch. Now I had mentioned it was potato starch, but the corn starch will work just fine as well. So that was 1 level cup of the laundry starch, and to that I'm going to add 1 pound of baking soda. So this is 1 pound. I'm going the whole box. Oops. Now before we go any farther, what I'm going to do is mix these two dry ingredients together and get them incorporated very well, breaking up the clumps as I go along. Now you can also put this in a food processor to speed up the time that it takes to get a powder further. Alright, so I have switched to the food processor. It's just going to take forever to hand mix that. Food processor can make quick work of it, so I'm just going to pulse this, but what I'm looking for is a very fine powder throughout with no lumps. Okay, so once I get that mixed, I'll be back. Alright, all mixed up, and you may have noticed when I pulsed it, the cloud of dust that came up. So a little trick that they use in the kitchen, of course, is just to cover it with a towel to keep the dust down. And at this point, what I'm going to do is simply dump everything into this dry pot and try to keep as much of the ingredients as I can. Alright, so now I'm ready to begin incorporating the wet ingredients, and then I'm going to start heating under a medium heat, and I'm going to stir constantly until everything reaches the consistency of, say, mashed potatoes. I'm going to continue to mix until I get rid of all of the lumps. Now the recipe calls for us to put the water and oil in together. So one surefire way to do that is to pour the water over the oil. I'm not going to include the food color at this time because this actually makes 2 pounds of clay. So I'm going to do as many things with it as I can, and I'm going to attempt to add the food colors to the finished mix. Now just let's say 3, 4, 5, 6 drops of thymol should be plenty. And now we're going to start heating. And I'm going to let the video run, but if this gets too long, I will certainly spare you and edit it out. And of course it wants to clump right away, as you can see. So this is going to take a good bit of work. Well, it didn't actually take very long at all. Now what occurred off camera was that when I began heating it, the mass did into the water very quickly. Once I was able to mix it in, you keep mixing it and you stir constantly, and portions of it will become lumpy, but just keep mixing, and once you get close, simply turn off your heat and watch something that looks like dry mashed potatoes. Now our clay is ready. Now what we're going to do is we're going to turn it out onto something to help it cool, and we're going to keep it covered with a damp cloth. Well, I'm just simply going to use the lid of this. Once it has completely cooled, you can keep it in this format if you want, and just pull out a little at a time, add food color. Now, as an artist, you may want to use something besides food color, so oil paints would be an option. Go sparingly. They use very similar amounts. If you use the oil paint, omit the corn oil. There we are. Now, unless you want a real pain washing out that pan, once I get this set, I'm going to run that pan and soak it with some soapy dish liquid before I try to clean it. So there it is. Now we're going to let that cool, and we're going to be back overnight. And we're going to work a little bit more with this. There we are. So just make sure that it's completely covered. No air gaps. We're going to let it sit like that overnight. Okay, we'll be back tomorrow. Well, it's only been about 30 minutes, and it's already cooled down, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to work this just a little bit. Very nice. Has a nice firm consistency to it. At this point, you would want to take it and knead this just to bring everything together, the same way you would clay. As you can see, it works to clay. There we are, nice smooth. Very soft clay. Now I'm going to attempt to add some food color to this, and I'm going to make a couple of different colors, and then I'm going to try to make some sort of little thing with it, and I'm going to pop it into the oven to dry it. Now, to dry this clay, what you want to do is you want to set your oven to 350. Bake it for 1 hour, take it out and let it cool, and then repeat until your clay is completely hard, firm, and set. Now I'm going to put on gloves because I'm going to work the food color in by hand. And because I'm using small amounts, I'm simply going to put the different colors into a bowl here to make it easier. Well, red is always a striking color. So we're going to go and we're going to just... That was 3 drops. Let's see what that gives us. As I have mentioned before, you can also use acrylic paint, And you can also use oil paint. And if you use oil paint, you will want to omit the oil that you put in before, and you want to use the oil paint as the oil in the initial mix. Okay. As you can see, it takes a good bit of kneading. That's to be expected. We have a little, perhaps light orange, not quite pink, but I think you get the idea. And that took nothing at all. And I'm just going to pop this into the bowl and set that aside, and let's try another color. This is actually lovely stuff, and I am really enjoying working with this and showing you this medium. Something smaller. Okay. Knead it to bring it all together. Okay. Why they make these tops like this, I don't know. It looks cool, but they're hard to work with. Now I've used a 3 drops again, and the amount that I've picked out of the bowl was somewhat smaller, and I'm hoping that this will give it just a little bit darker green. Now for the rest of this, I'm going to pop this into a Ziploc bag because we can store this. Now, you want to take all the air out of that, and at the end of this I will show you a little trick on how to get all of the air out of a Ziploc bag. So we're just going to set that aside for right now. Now I'm going to attempt to do something artistic with a couple with these, and I'll come back and we'll pop these into the oven. Okay, so I attempted to pop this into a mold, and it's stuck, of course. So if you use something like this, you'll want to use a release agent. I'm not going to put something plastic in the oven, but I did find something here. This is a scrap of silicone that I poked some holes in, and I squeezed the green into that. And I just wanted to show you, first off, what a terrible artist I am, but I wanted to show you how this stuff works just like clay does. And I have cut a little star. Yes, that's a star. Just like clay. Excellent medium. So this is a piece of Teflon here, so I'm just going to pop this straight into the oven. I'm going to set it to 350. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to preheat the oven to 350. I'm going to pop this in, and then I'm going to turn the heat off and let the oven slowly cool down while this dries. Take it out and test. If it has not dried, then I'm going to repeat that process. Now this is very thin, and I made that so that I can just move on here. If you choose to use a very thick piece of clay, you will need to repeat that process several times, where you slow bake it, let it cool, and then bake it again. All right. Fresh out of the oven. One dry cycle seemed to have worked. I broke that when I was handling it. So, the color retention, there's some lightning. They popped out of the silicone mold very easily. Some color differential there. Now the amount of water that's in here can have some effect on that. This is a rather wet mix. You can adjust the water just a little bit, make it more dry. You will still need to adjust for the lightning during the drying. Now, before I closed, I wanted to show you a little trick here. Here is our storage bag. I'm going to keep my clay in here, and to take all the air out of this so that it will keep even longer, is I am going to partially seal this up. I'm going to poke in my vacuum cleaner hose, turn it on for a second, get all of the air out, seal it up, and it should stay a good long time in the refrigerator. Now, this mix here should be able to stay for a few days in the refrigerator, just like that. Alright, so there we have it. A DIY clay, sustainable, and also a serious medium for the artist. Now, I will surely get a couple of questions about how to make this stronger. The solvent used in this was water, so therefore it needs to be protected from water. So I like to use shellac to cover it. This is sustainable. Shellac is sustainable. It is the secretion of the female lac bug, so plenty of those. Now, another green sealer used on concrete and things like that is something called silane, so you can also look into that. Now, to make it stronger, this is not terribly green. This is chopped fiberglass, and you add that as a binder to the clay and you can make it much stronger. One of my favorite binders is Elmer's glue. Mix a little bit with that, substitute this for a portion of the water, and will be great. I also demonstrated a homemade space bag, and for those of you that may remember the space bag, it was one of the most genius inventions of all time. Now, the genius part of that was they sold you a heavy-duty trash bag for $20. It showed you how to use your own vacuum cleaner to suck out the air. Alright then, thanks so much for watching, and if you like, please subscribe.